Welcome back. This is Sandy with Sandy's Organized Chaos, and today we are going to be doing kind of an old school look. We're going to be adding some fun bleach spots to our tumbler to give this really neat effect. As always, I'll make sure to put everything I used today into the description box below so that way you guys can shop those items if you would like to. If you're new to my channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and let's wake up, prep these tumblers, and slay all day. Let's do this. So before we jump right into doing our bleach spot look, we need a really neat glittery base, don't we? So let's go ahead and get started on that first. So I'm going for more of a fall look today with my color scheme. So that's the colors that I'm going with. I went ahead and prepped and primed my tumbler here. I'm just using a rustic pink for my base, and I'm going to use the epoxy method to adhere my glitter down. I'm going to be using a mix of shaped glitter, and I'm also going to be using kind of a medium chunky glitter. So I'm going to use a little bit more epoxy than usual, just so that way I know my chunky stuff lays nice and flat. So I used about 5 milliliters of epoxy. I didn't use all 5, but probably about half that. Half that should do, especially for this size tumbler. It really depends on what size tumbler you're using. Now that that's all smoothed on, I'm going to go ahead and take my shapes. These are called Yuletide dots. And as you see, it's just a bunch of different size circle shapes. So if you happen to go into your glitter pantry and you have a bunch of different shapes just sitting there, this is a fun way. You could actually use any type of shapes you want and then come back through with a filler and fill it in, kind of in the same fashion that I'm doing here. It doesn't matter if it's these particular dots, it could be whatever you'd like it to be. So I'm actually going to fill this up quite a bit because this is like the main focal point of my tumbler. I really like these circles, so I'm going to fill this up pretty much almost to where there's really not too much showing through. Now, after you get this all loaded up with whatever shape you're using, you're going to go ahead and move on to applying the filler glitter, or you could leave it like this. I thought that looked kind of cool too. And for my filler glitter, I'm going to use Sweater Weather, which is actually pretty much the same exact colors, just in like a medium chunky. So it has blue, rose gold, has the silver and all that in there with it. So I'm going to go ahead and just fill that in, just laying it down right over top of the rest of our tumbler here. Now, after you get that filled in, you really shouldn't have to do too much tapping. I'm just going to wipe away from around the rim, and I am going to come in and kind of help out that handle if there's anything kind of poking up or seeming like it's just going to not be fun to deal with once we go to start applying our epoxy layers. I'll go ahead and remove it now so that way I don't have to worry about it later. So I'm just going to tap everything down, making sure it's nice and smooth for me. And then I'll set that off to the side and let that cure before we move on to the next step. And after that is cured, we are ready to move on to getting that first coat of epoxy over top of our raw glitter. So before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and spray it down really good with my 2x Ultra just to give it kind of a buffer, because we're using metallic glitters, or you can use a liquid sealer as well, whichever one you have on hand. But that really helps out with these metallic glitters because the epoxy sometimes wants to wick away off of our glitter, and that kind of helps make sure that it bonds a bit better to the surface of our glitter as we apply our epoxy. So we'll go ahead and apply our glitter. We'll get it put there we go, there. We'll get it put onto our turner. We'll hit it up really good with our torch, popping any little micro bubbles. We'll go ahead and let that cure, and then we're ready to move on to the fun part, which is our bleach spots. So whatever decal you plan on using, I want you to take it and I want you to go ahead and prep it. Mine in particular I got from 311 Co. I've had it on hand. I've been wanting to use it. Now I'm going to finally use it today. So I'm going to go ahead and trim that up really good. This is not a UVDTF. This is one of those clear cast decals where it's vinyl and all that. So the image stays onto the vinyl. So you're just going to have to trim it up really good. I just get it as close as I can to the image. So now we're going to need some type of acrylic marker. I like to use something in a color that I know I'm going to be using as far as my spray paints go, so that way if I spray paint, I really don't care if it stays on there, you know what I mean? It can just get covered up with the spray paint, but we're going to use our decal and use an acrylic marker. And we're just going to outline the area. So I'm not gonna fully outline it. I'm just gonna make these dots right along the outside. And I came back through and made them a little bit thicker because it was hard to see because it looked almost like the dot glitter that I was using. So I'm just gonna come through and kind of darken those up, but we're gonna use that as a guide as to where we want our main bleach spot look to be. So after we get our lines put down, then we're gonna go ahead and head outside and get those bleach spots going. So I'm pulling one of the colors from the glitter I'm using. I'm pulling a blue, so I'm going to use this Nantucket blue just to kind of highlight the little bits of blue that are on this glitter. And I also knew I wanted to do some type of metallic as well, again, to go with the glitter color. So obviously whatever glitter you're using, just kind of pull from those glitters and figure out what color scheme you want to go for. So these are going to be my underlying colors, and then I will come through with a main bleach spot. So as you can see, I am just holding my can back pretty far back, and I'm just going to do some pretty random spots around the front where my main decal is going to be. I did add a bit more to that area, and then around the back I just did smaller spots. But I'm holding the can back probably a good 2 feet or so from the tumbler itself. I just want kind of that plume to hit it, so it gives it more of that spritzed bleach look. Then I will go ahead and come through with my metallic. I did let this blue sit for a few minutes just to make sure it was dry, because if it doesn't dry right away and you move into your next color, it will want to crackle the color above it, which I'm going to show you exactly what happens and how to fix that. I made sure to do that as well to show you guys. So as you see, I am just taking this another accent color and just spritzing right around the blue color. So I'm trying to keep all these colors all together so that way they don't stray too far. I still want to be able to see the glitter pretty well underneath. And again, kind of focusing on where that main decal will be, so that way it has that look around it when we go to kind of clean everything up. So here I'm showing you what I like to do to add speckles. I like to hold the trigger down ever so gently just until the paint just trickles out of there, and it will just give it that speckly look all over the place. Now with this, it was kind of hard to see, but with the off-white that I'm going to be using, you'll see it a lot better. For our finishing color, this is the color that your spot or your decal is going to go over top of. So I'm using an off-white. This is called Ivory Silk. I think it goes really well, especially with the color tones that we're dealing with today. So again, I'm focusing on the main front first. I was trying to find where my spots were, where my decal was going to be, and I could find them still. So now I'm just going to very carefully just spritz it. As you see, I'm just not full on at one time. I'm just pressing it ever so gently, so that way I can fully come in there and make just this circle. And I don't want to fully fill it in. I know it does look a bit smoky around some of those areas, but that's okay, because we're going to come through and we're going to clean the areas up that we don't want those extra overspraying to be. And as you see, it's just a small amount that I'm letting out of the tips, so that way I don't accidentally overspray on top of everything that we just did. Now to finish it off, I'm going to again do that where I like to make that splatter where I just barely hold the trigger, and then it just splatters the paint all over it, and you can add as much or as little of that as you would like. And then I'm going to go ahead and hold it up to the camera, and I'm going to turn it around. You can't see it just yet, but when I go back inside, you'll be able to see it. There was an area right at the bottom there that is starting to crackle because I didn't let that bronze fully dry. And so I'm just going to take care of that. As you can see now, you can see it there. So we brought it back inside, it's nice and dry, and the main thing we need to focus on is cleaning up that overspray that we just don't want, but we don't want to take away the extra like splatters and stuff we did. So we're going to be using 99% rubbing alcohol. So isopropyl alcohol is what we're going to use to clean up those areas in between to save the splatter looks, but take away that haze that happens to be over top. Now I'm going to bring it around to the front. You can see there that I'm going to try to rub it away a little bit, but it just wasn't handling it. So what I'm going to have to do is use acetone or a fingernail polish remover to remove more of that paint. So if you use acetone, it's going to remove a lot. If you use rubbing alcohol, it's just going to do like layer by layer. So we're going to use the acetone to buff away just that area that I accidentally messed up on there. And it brought it back to about the bronze area, and that was good, just like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it back outside, and I'm just going to gently spray it one more time with my ivory or my off-white spray paint right over top of that, and come back in and clean it up once more. And that's the great thing about this kind of look, is it's pretty rustic. So if that happens, it's really, look, you can't even tell that happened. You're going to come back through and give it a good wipe down with your rubbing alcohol, not your acetone, and clean up that haze, get your glitter looking all pretty, clean up any little spots that just need to be cleaned up, and there we go. We got our bleach spot look. But after I turned around, I want you guys to notice that I did come back through with just my rubbing alcohol to get my circle a little bit tighter. So that's why it looks a little bit smaller. I cleaned up really good around those edges to get it fine-tuned to the size of the decal that I have. But there we go. I know you guys got this. So to finish up mine, before I put on my decal, I am going to go ahead and put on a coating of epoxy, especially for the type of decal I use. It needs a smooth epoxied surface. So into my epoxy, I'm going to keep going with my shapes here. I'm going to add a little bit more of those Yuletide dots mixed right in. I'll go ahead and get that applied to my surface now. Again, just like when working with like glitters in my epoxy, when I'm working with the shapes and stuff like this in my epoxy, I'm only going to work in about a 1 to 2 inch space. So that way I know that my dots are evenly dispersed and don't look too splotchy in different spots. So again, I'm just going to work in 1 to 2 inches so that way I don't spread it too far around. We'll go ahead and get it onto my turner, hit it up really good with my torch, let that cure. And after that has cured, I'm going to go ahead and trim up my rim. I'm going to give it a good sanding, and I'm also going to sand down anything else that needs to be sanded. Now, let's say the area where your decal is going to go, if you're using the particular decal that I'm using, you can't sand that area where this decal is going to go because you'll be able to see the scratches permanently underneath your decal. But if you're using something like a UV-DTF, you can go ahead and sand it away if you'd like to. So no matter what I do, I'm just making sure that I'm not going to touch the area where my decal is going to go. If it does need to be sanded really well, then I suggest you add another coat of epoxy over top of that area before you apply this decal. So I'm going to go ahead and take my decal. I'm going to get that lined up right where I'd like it to be. And I'm going to make sure that I come through and buff it down really, really well. So as long as you buff this down really well, you will not be able to see this once it's under the epoxy. You can't even tell that this is a clear cast decal at all. That, you know, I really love these. I think they're super cool to use along with the UV DTF. So neat to use. So let's say you do get a bubble underneath your decal, that's okay. You're going to come through and you're going to take like a needle or something and you're going to poke right where the bubble's at. You'll know because it'll kind of be miscolored or discolored compared to the rest of the decal. It'll have like a hazy look to it. And then you're just going to press all the air out and nobody will know the difference. But that's it. That's all you have to do for the bleach spot look. All that's left to do is add your final coats of epoxy and she is ready to go. Whether you take this design and duplicate it as is, or you take it and let it inspire you to create something that is completely your own, I hope that you guys had a lot of fun watching this tutorial today. Again, if you're new to my channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys next time.